Today we got Snake Eyes, released in 1998, directed by Brian De Palma, director of legendary movies like Scarface, The Untouchables. First Mission Impossible movie. This dude is awesome when it comes to making movies. He's got more as well, like Carlito's Way. Awesome movie. He tends to do these more sort of slow burn, thrillery, conspiracy, not so much action. Like they can be classed as action movies. They tend to be more a little bit of sort of like whodunit, really slow sort of stuff that ramp up to a really big conclusion. You've got Nic Cage in the leading role, playing a little bit slightly dodgy detective who gets invited to a boxing match by his old friend who's a commander in the Navy, played by Gary Sinise. So the plot of this movie is essentially that there's a conspiracy, and the conspiracy gets uncovered at a boxing match. Okay, so what's our intro to Nic Cage's character? Detective Santoro, Rick Santoro, dodgy policeman, super dodgy. The first shot that you see of him, he's on a TV, he's on a little local TV camera, and he's holding on to his mate, and he's like, I'm on TV.
What's you need? My hair looks like shit.
I'm on TV.
Rick, for Christ's sake, I'm on in 30 seconds, will ya?
I think people would vote for this face, don't you?
Yeah, fine.
That's the only way you get anywhere these days. You gotta get your big, fat smile all over the tube. Hi, Rick Santoro. Hello, Richard Santoro. I'm Ricky!
And he just does his classic little Nic Cage-isms. But he doesn't go all the way, not in this movie. He's a little bit more subdued in this film. But you get this awesome tracking shot that opens with Nic Cage. So the camera follows him for about 2 or 3 minutes, and you see his personality through that. He's walking through the arena. He comes across, the VIP area. The boxers are waiting, so they get their little VIP room. He sees an informant there in Luis Guzman. Chases after him. They're heading down some escalators. The tracking shot is still following all the way down. There's some security down there as well who are like, what the fuck's going on here? Nic Cage pulls out his badge. He's like, bro, I'm on the job. I'm here to stop this criminal. They're like, oh, you want some help? He's like, nah, I got this. Corners him, beats the shit out of him, takes like $3,000 off the dude and a little bit more money that happens to be, it's all bloodied up. He takes that bloody note off him as well. So he takes the money off him. The camera's still following as well. So Nic Cage pulls out of that little alley, sees the bookkeeper, says, hey, I want to put $3,000 on Tyler to win. Gives him the money. He's like, how'd you get the money? He's like, it doesn't matter. It's my money. Don't worry about it. And the escalator is coming Tyler, and he's got this hilarious scene where he's just like chanting the guy's name.
Tyler! Woo! Neptune high, right? Check it out right here! Go Sea Devils! You and me, Tyler! Yeah! Go Tyler! Go Tyler! Go Tyler! Go! Go Tyler! Go Tyler! Go Tyler! Whoa! Lincoln Tyler! Lincoln Tyler! Lincoln!
And it's just so very typical Nic Cage. Once Tyler's gone, he goes back up, the shot is still tracking him. Not even a minute later, his wife calls. It's his son's birthday. She's like, hey, when are you coming home? And he's like, oh, I'm at the fight. Like, I gotta get can't talk, I can't talk to my son. And she puts his kid on the phone. He's like, don't put the kid on the phone. And he's talking to his son. And his son really wants an autograph from the boxer. And Nic Cage is like, I'll get you one, man. Like, I'll get you one. Trust me. Don't worry about it. When I see the guy, I'll get you one. We're still tracking all the way to ringside. And Nic Cage has this moment where he's just like, he throws his arm out. He's like, that's the guy.
There he is!
You got a sister? It's all right. He's with me.
There's the man whose life I want!
You're late.
You know me, always upholding justice.
That's the guy whose life I want. And it happens to be one of his old friends, played by Gary Sinise, who's now a commander in the Navy. So Gary Sinise's character's job is to protect the defense secretary, who's also sitting with them. So he's sitting one seat behind where the commander is sitting, and Nic Cage is sitting right next to him. So you've kind of got like a little L shape of seats. Once they sit down, for some reason, Gary Sinise's character is obsessed with this red-headed woman that he sees in the distance who's just sitting over there, and he can't take his eyes off her, and he's talking to Nic Cage. He's like, why is there this beautiful redhead? Why is she sitting there? She's definitely not with the guy she's with. How do you know she's not with the guy she's with? What kind of assumption is that? Maybe he's got really good conversation. Maybe she's not with him for his money. Who knows? We can only assume. And Nic Cage is like, mate, he's like, who cares, man? Let's just watch the fight. Anyway, the fight's going on. There's a couple of knockdowns. There's a little bit of this and that. And in the background, you kind of hear what's going on in the fight. You don't see what's happening in the fight, but you can hear the commentators. And they're talking about how the other fighter is talking a lot of shit, talking a lot of smack. He's got one knockdown, got a knockdown here and there. He's hitting the champ with punches. And Nic Cage is very fixed on what's happening in the boxing match because he's just put $3,000 on it. he wants Tyler to win. And Gary Sinise gets up, he goes over to the redhead, he's talking to her, and obviously we're seeing it from Nic Cage's perspective, so you can't hear what Gary Sinise is saying to this redheaded woman. He's just talking to her. You notice that she runs off. Now, because she runs off, Gary Sinise chases her as well. Nic Cage is like, fuck, man, what is this motherfucker doing? Into the spare seat comes this woman who's dressed all in white. She's got blonde hair, white suit pants. She sits down into that spare seat in front of the defense secretary. And Nic Cage is like, hey, no, you can't sit here. This is taken. She turns around, and of course she's gorgeous. Of course it's Carla Gugino. All of a sudden, the charm lights go off. You know, he starts flirting with her. He's like, that seat's taken, but you can sit on mine. You know, you can share it with me. You can sit on my lap. Haha, hee hee. And she's like, oh, I think I'm okay. And she starts talking to the secretary. He's focused on the fight again. There's another knockdown. And at this point, the champ has gone down. Tyler's gone down. And Nic Cage isn't stoked. He's yelling. He's like, you bum. Get up, you bum. You're costing me money. Get up. All of a sudden, this creepy looking dude in the crowd gets up. He starts yelling, here comes the pain. You're like, what the hell is this dude doing? Gets mobbed by a bunch of Tyler's staff. Bang, gunshot goes off. Defense secretary, right between the eyes, dead. Another gunshot goes off. Hits Carla Gugino's character in the arm. Nic Cage grabs her. They dive onto the ground. There's a couple more gunshots that happen off in the distance. Nic Cage has pulled his gun. He's lying down. He's on the ground. He's like, ooh, what's happening? He notices the fighter, so Tyler, who's gone down, who's been knocked out. He wakes up just as if nothing's happened. He's heard the gunshot and he's woken up. He's locked eyes with Nic Cage, and then he goes back to being knocked out. Don't think too much of it because you just assume, oh wow, he's woken up. Don't think about what's just happened. You're just like, oh well, the defense secretary's been shot. Who cares? Why are we lingering on? Why are we lingering on the boxer who is woken up from being knocked out and then lays back down? You would just assume that he's in pain, like he's just been knocked out, he's gone back down. All of a sudden you see Gary Sinise, he's running down, he's got his gun pulled, he's like, I got him, I got the shooter. Where's the secretary? Secretary's dead, man. We know the secretary's dead. Gary Sinise is like, fuck, it was my job. I was supposed to protect him. And I didn't protect him. Nic Cage is like, no, come here, we're gonna go talk about this. So he pulls him aside, he's like, what happened? Where'd you go? What's the matter? Yeah, he explains to him, he's like, I chase after the redhead, blah, blah, blah. Nic Cage is like, no, that's not happening. This is not what we say. He's like, because you're getting shit. Like, you will get proper fucked by the military if you've abandoned your post to go after some redhead. He's like, no, what we're gonna do, we're gonna say you went after a suspect, and then you found the shooter, you shot the shooter, you're the hero. So Nic Cage is used to this sort of spin. His character, Rick Santora, is used to doing the dodgy spinning. They have this conversation, they figure out that they gotta find the witness, they gotta find the woman. Gary Sinise is like, okay, we're gonna go, you go over this way, you go check this out. Nic Cage is like, I'm gonna go into the security cameras area, I'm gonna try and find her on the cameras. And this is where the plot really starts. So we get a new tracking shot. So Nic Cage heads off, Nic Cage goes and does Nic Cage things, but we get a tracking shot with Gary Sinise now. The music changes and you go, all right, hang on. Something's happening here. It's getting a little bit ominous. And he goes out the back, he goes into this sort of like, he goes into this staff only area, he's got this access card, swipes it, bang, down he goes. And who's down there? The redhead and the dude who yelled out, here comes the pain. They just happen to be people in the Navy who work with Commander Kevin Dunn. They're his lackeys, essentially. Now the whole idea is, we know Gary Sinise is the bad guy, but Nic Cage doesn't quite know just yet. He doesn't know yet. So whenever they come together and they talk, Gary Sinise is getting more information from Nic Cage than Nic Cage is getting from Gary Sinise. Nic Cage decides that he needs to find the woman in the white, the one who got shot, because she must still be in the building somewhere. There was a lockdown, she couldn't possibly have gotten out. So that's what's happening. He goes into the security booth up in the casino area, and they find her. He manages to find her. She goes off with this guy, gets into his room so that, she can lay low and away from the cameras and whatnot. He just thinks that she's trying to have sex with him, and that's, she played it up a little bit. She played it up so that, he would take her up to the room and give her a place to hide out. But as soon as she's like, no, putting this dick in me, my boy, he's like, oh, get out of my room. And as he kicks her out, it's crazy. Nic Cage just happens to be at that door, catches her, bursts into the room, kicks the dude out of the room, kicks him out of his own room, starts talking to her. He's like, you gotta tell me what's going on, you gotta tell me. In the meantime, you've got Gary Sinise on the same floor. So on the exact same floor, looking for this girl. And then he comes across the guy who's been kicked out of his room. The dude's freaking out. He's like, this fucking hotel sucks. I fucking hate it here. Some dude just broke into my apartment. And Gary Sinise is like, show me. Take me. And we'll sort it out. They get there. Of course, Nic Cage and the girl are gone. They head down like a stairwell and they sit there, and she's in shock. She's freaking out. He's like, tell me from the start. Like, what happened? What's going on? She explains to him that she's from the Defense Department. She's a data processor that's there. And she found that the weapons that they were manufacturing are faulty. Nic Cage is like, all right, so bang, we have a conspiracy. It's during this conversation that she drops the bomb on him that Gary Sinise was the one that she saw. You know, she knows that he's the bad guy, and she explains this to him, and he's like, no, I don't believe you. That's my friend. That's my boy. It's not happening. But the more she explains it to him, the more he realizes, fuck, man, why's it gotta be my mate who's the dodgy one? You know, why couldn't you just be a good bloke? Why do you have to go and do dodgy shit like this? It takes Carla to a safe place. He goes and locks her away in this sort of storage area that's sort of like down. It's sort of like down the bottom of the arena area, down the bottom of the casino. Nic Cage goes into the security booth again, and he's like, hey, show me these cameras. I need to look at these things by myself. Like, I need to look at these things. And in there he sees there's this camera that was roving around the arena, sees Gary Sinise there waiting for the shooter to shoot, and then pulling his gun and shooting the dude. And that's where he goes, damn it, it's 100%. This dude is the bad guy. I'm not happy. But while he's been looking at the camera, Gary Sinise, just out of thin air, has appeared behind him on the steps, just quiet as a mouse, and he's waiting there. And he's like, why couldn't you leave it alone? Why couldn't you just do what you always do and just leave it? Don't investigate. He's like, I'll give you money. I'll give you $500,000. So you don't want $500,000? I'll give you $600,000. Oh, I'll give you $750,000. Gets all the way up to $1 million. Nic Cage is like, no, I'm being a detective. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to let you kill this woman. So in this whole time where we haven't seen Gary Sinise, he actually went and spoke to Tyler. He explained to him, he's like, I'm the one blackmailing you. We got to fucking stop Rick Santoro. We got to stop him. And what do? They get a hold of Nic Cage. They beat the piss out of him. Just bash the fuck out of him. And there's this great moment where Gary Sinise picks him up and he's like, all you had to do was just not push. You just had to do what you do normally, and I wouldn't have done anything to you. And Nic Cage spits blood all over his press with all their little fucking ribbons and shit. And he just spits blood all over that. And Gary Sinise knocks him out. Just, how dare you? How dare you spit on my attire, you fuck? Just bang, whacks him. We know that he was tracking the defense secretary. He had this little pin thing that he was sticking on him. So he takes that off his mate that was on him, sticks it on the back of Nic Cage. Nic Cage wakes up, maybe an hour later, 2 hours later, who knows? We can't tell. It's not explained. And he starts going to where he's hiding Julia, which is Carla Gugino's character, where he's hiding her. And in the meantime, of course, Gary Sinise is tracking him with his little tracker. They head down, and there's this moment where Nic Cage sees him because there's lightning strikes happening and the flashes, and Gary Sinise makes a shadow. And he knows, and he's like, mate, they have this little monologue where it's like, it's over. Like, it's, you know, just give me the girl, man. Like, we're done. And Nic Cage is like, no, I'm not doing it. Not after all this. Like, it's not happening. A police van starts heading down the docks towards where that outside shed type thing is. Now, there's also a news crew there as well, like a local news crew with their van, and they're doing a little spot, like out in the rain as well, out in the torrential rain, because the gigantic globe that we saw in the opening shot of the film has fallen off the roof. And so the news crew were like, this would be great. Let's go do a spot in front of that. Because they've blocked one part of the road, the globe starts coming towards them. The police have to veer off. They crash into the shed. Their windscreen blows up. Nic Cage makes it through the door, jumps onto Julia. Gary Sinise walks through the door with his little gun, and the police are like, put down your gun. But Gary Sinise knows. He's like, all the evidence is there, you found it. And Nic Cage hits him with the line, you've got snake eyes.
Rick! Tell him! Please! For God's sake! Tell him what we got here! Ain't no we, Kevin! You got snake eyes!
And it's perfect. The way it's delivered, there's like a zoom in on his face. He's got blood dripping down here, his eyeballs all fucking blown up to shit. And Gary Sinise just turns around, just fucking puts a bullet in his brain. He's like, that's it, I'm done. And we get the pseudo happy ending. But the greatest thing about this movie, this is a more mature movie for Nic Cage, and it's probably got a lot to do with the director as well. But once they've You know, they've cut the movie. The plot is finished. There's this sort of kind of like a 60 Minutes episode. You know, it shows Rick Santoro, Nic Cage's character, getting awarded by the city for his bravery in uncovering this conspiracy. We find out that he's running for mayor and he goes for it. But then we also start to find out that all his dodgy stuff is starting to come up. All these allegations of fraud and just shitty behavior comes out. His mistress leaves him. His wife leaves him. He loses his job and he keeps going to court and they find him at court. And the movie ends with he managed to do one good thing, but that doesn't make up for a lifetime of shittiness, you know, which is fair enough. So yeah, if you guys are after a less psycho Nic Cage movie and you like those sort of slow burn thrillers, mate, Snake Eyes is for you. This one for me is probably like an 8 out of 10. So yeah, if you guys enjoyed it, chuck me a like, chuck me a comment, tell me your favorite Nic Cage movie, tell me your favorite Brian De Palma movie. I'll see you guys on the next one. Hope you enjoyed.